The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It pooled in the cracks of the parking lot outside Rosewood High School, darkening the corners of the brick building like bruises. Inside, the dim light of a Thursday afternoon detention flickered across the face of 15-year-old Riley Carter as he slumped in the back of the library, spinning a pencil between his fingers. His phone had been confiscated, the clock refused to move, and Mrs. Petrowski, the monitor, was half asleep behind the circulation desk. Bored, Riley reached across the bookshelf behind him and grabbed a stack of old yearbooks shoved onto the bottom shelf. They smelled like dust and old glue. Most were from the early 2000s, but one caught his eye. Green faux leather, gold lettering worn thin. Class of 1995, he flipped it open and snorted at the hairstyles. Frosted tips, plaid skirts, denim jackets, awkward grins. Everything looked like a bad movie. Page after page of smiling teenagers, most probably now middle-aged or worse. As he lazily flipped toward the back, something stopped him. On the inside of the back cover, just above the binding, someone had written in elegant, almost too perfect cursive, "If I disappear, find the man with the stars on his wrist. Callie." 95. Riley blinked. The ink had faded slightly, but was still legible. Navy blue, maybe gel pen. It didn't look like a joke. It looked intentional. He glanced at the door. Still closed. Mrs. Petrowski hadn't moved. The air around him felt suddenly cold. He flipped to the senior portrait, searching for Callie. There she was, Callie Everwood. A soft smile, dark eyes, long hair tucked behind one ear. Her bio quote, "Art speaks where words are unable to explain." Callie Everwood, Riley muttered under his breath, staring at the name. He didn't know why, but it stuck to his ribs. It's like a whisper from underwater. That night, he couldn't let it go. After dinner, while his parents argued faintly in the other room, Riley opened his laptop and searched the name. At first, nothing but a few old mentions in forum threads. But then a headline from the Oregonian, dated November 1995, "Local teen vanishes after weekend party. Police still searching for leads." Beneath it, Callie Everwood, 16, missing since October 21st. He clicked. There was a photo of the same girl, her hair a little messier, her face younger than the yearbook photo, but unmistakably her. The article was brief. She had attended a Halloween party near Lake Adeline. She was last seen walking alone around midnight. No signs of a struggle. No suspects, no closure, and then nothing. Just the aching silence of a cold case. The next morning, Riley brought the yearbook to the school counselor's office. Mrs. Baird was in her late 40s. Warm and no-nonsense, with the kind of smile that always seemed aware of your lie before. "You told it?" He set the book on her desk and pointed to the writing. "I found this yesterday in the library, on the back page." She adjusted her glasses, squinting at the cursive. "Huh. That's odd. I Googled her, Callie Everwood. She went missing that same year." I thought maybe Mrs. Baird raised a hand gently. "I appreciate you bringing this to me, Riley, but it's likely just some dramatic seniors idea of a prank. High schoolers have always been theatrical. But it matches a real missing person, I understand," she interrupted kindly. "And it's tragic. But this school has been here for decades. The yearbook might have been passed around, written in by anyone. Maybe even years after 95. He frowned. "So you're not going to tell anyone?" "I'll mention it to the root principal," she said, closing the book, "but there's not much we can do unless new evidence comes up." But later that day, alone in her office, Mrs. Baird couldn't help herself. She reopened the book. She stared at the handwriting for a long time. It was graceful, deliberate. Not the scrawl of a teenager seeking attention, but something more personal. Desperate even. "Find the man with the stars on his wrist." Her fingers hovered over the phrase. She did a quick search for Callie Everwood in Rosewood High. The first result was a thread on a cold case forum. It's mostly dead except for one recent post. Posted 4 months ago by user Ghostink, 1995. Still looking. No body. No closure. Somebody out there remembers something. A girl like her doesn't just vanish. Baird closed the tab and leaned back in her chair. She looked out the window. The rain was still falling. Meanwhile, across town, a woman sat alone in a cluttered apartment, headphones on. Voice recorder running, case file 313, Callie Everwood, 16. Last seen October 21st, 1995. Party near Lake Adeline. Unsolved. She clicked a pen and whispered to herself, if the name is showing up now, someone wants her found. On the desk beside her, newspaper clippings and photos were pinned with red yarn to a corkboard dot at the center. A faded photo of Callie, and beside it, a scribbled message enlarged from a scan of the yearbook. If I disappear, find the man with the stars on his wrist. She stood, shaking, phone in hand, staring at the screen. The notification blinked. A school counselor had reached out via the contact form on her blog. The subject line read, "Found something in a yearbook, thought you should see it." She sat down slowly. After 25 years, the case had whispered back, and this time it wasn't going to be ignored. October 20th, 1995, Rosewood, Oregon. The kind of rain that came down that Friday wasn't soft. It slapped the sidewalks, turned gutters into rivers, and bled the orange leaves off trees. Still, the party was on. Callie Everwood sat by her bedroom window, sketchbook in hand, watching water race down the glass like tiny rivers. She'd drawn the same eye 3 times, wide, hollow, always looking back at her. "Callie, you ready yet?" her mother shouted from downstairs. "I'm not going anymore," she called back, knowing it was a lie. The truth was, she couldn't. Stop thinking about him, about what he said the night before. You're not like them. You see the world like I do. She didn't know what to call what they had. It wasn't dating. It was secret phone calls, scribbled letters slid between, parked cars and stolen kisses in places they were never supposed to be. He was older, much older. She never told anyone, not even her best friend, Lacey. That night, at 9:12 p.m., Callie slipped out the back door wearing a denim jacket and a black dress. In her pocket was a folded note. "Meet me by the dock. Midnight. Alone." Lacey picked her up. Already blasting Nirvana from her mom's car stereo. "You're actually going?" Lacey asked, surprised. "I just want to get out of the house." But all night Callie was distant sketching shapes into her cup with her fingertip, barely touching the lukewarm beer. She checked the time too often, like a toll. 11:58 p.m. Lake Adeline dock creaked beneath her as she walked to the end. The trees surrounding the water loomed like silent witnesses. She clutched the note in her hand, damp from sweat and mist. Then a whisper behind her, "You came." She turned, wearing a step from the shadows. Tall, wearing a long black coat. Clung to his dark hair, and on his wrists barely visible beneath the sleeves tiny star tattoos, one on each side. "I wasn't sure you'd really do it," he said. "I shouldn't be here," Callie whispered. "I shouldn't be doing this." His face tightened. "You don't trust me anymore? I don't know who you are, really." Her voice shook. "You won't tell me your real name? You show up out of nowhere and disappear for days?" He stepped closer, the wood groaning beneath his boots. "I told you, there are things I can't explain yet. But you said you loved me. I was 16 when I said that," she murmured. "I still am." His jaw clenched. "Then you're not ready for the truth." "I think I made a mistake," she said, stepping back. The last thing anyone ever heard from Callie Everwood was the splash of footsteps fading down the dock. The next morning to 8:27 a.m., Everwood stood in Callie's empty bedroom. The sheets still warm. Her daughter's sketchbook was left open on the bed, a drawing. A girl on a dock, alone, with stars in the sky shaped like eyes, by noon. She had filed a missing person report. The search began fast. Helicopters, dogs, dozens. Volunteers combed the woods and lake. No purse. No jacket. No footprints that hadn't been washed away. But then, 3 days in, just off the shore, someone found it. A necklace. Silver chain. The charm broken in half. Elaine recognized it instantly. Callie's father had given it to her before he died. Local TV, November 2nd, 1995. Elaine sat under studio lights. makeup doing little to hide the sleeplessness in her face. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Callie wouldn't just leave. She was planning college. She was working on her portfolio. She wiped her eyes. She left everything behind: her clothes, her cat, her drawings. Something happened to her.
Oh.
Camera zoomed in. Elaine held up the broken necklace. "If you know anything, please, come forward. She's out there. She's my only child." But weeks passed, then months. Rumors began. Some whispered about drugs. Others said she ran off with an older guy. One caller claimed they'd seen her hitchhiking near the state line. None of it held up. There was talk of a man seen at the party, a stranger no one could name. Someone who didn't go to their school. Lacey mentioned the note, but when police searched Callie's room, it wasn't there. December 1995, police interview. Debt. Warren Price? No physical evidence, no blood. No signs of struggle. "We found the necklace, yes, but no prints on it. No fibers, no witness statements that link her to a suspect. It's as if she stepped into the water and vanished." Elaine stopped speaking to reporters after Christmas. Her home slowly became a mausoleum, drawings pinned to every wall, Callie's bedroom untouched. Every year, she lit a candle on October 21st. Every year, no one answered the phone. Back to 2020. Josie's apartment, the room was quiet, except for the hum of the old tape recorder. Josie sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through copies of old police reports and clippings. She'd spent years reading about cases like this, but something about Callie felt different. Intimate, a girl who left breadcrumbs, who warned them 25 years before anyone listened. Her name, appearing now, like a ghost refusing silence. In that line, "Find the man with the stars on his wrist." Josie reached across her desk and jotted the words again. She traced over the word stars with her pen, letting the ink dig in. Somewhere in the shadows of 1995, a man had taken something, and she was going to find him. The walls of Josie Marin's apartment had become a shrine to ghosts. Strings of red yarn stretched from pushpins connecting yearbook pages, newspaper clippings, and photocopied police reports. At the center of it all was a scanned image, the back cover of a 1995 yearbook, zoomed in on a single line of cursive ink. "If I disappear, find the man with the stars on his wrist." Callie 95. Josie stared at it like it might blink back. She had read hundreds of missing persons cases since starting her true crime blog on Silenced, but something about this one clawed at her. A teen girl who had vanished, a cryptic note, a 25-year silence broken by a bored boy flipping through old high school nostalgia. It wasn't just the mystery. It was the voice in that message, the fear buried in it. Josie leaned forward, tapped a pen against her notebook, and muttered into her phone recorder, "Case file 027, Callie Everwood. Disappeared October 21st, 1995. Yearbook message discovered in Rosewood High School, Oregon. 2020, confirmed handwriting sample matches Callie's known signature." She clicked off the recorder and exhaled. The first thing that struck her is the oddity of the yearbook itself. Rosewood High School, where the yearbook was discovered, hadn't even opened until 1997, 2 years after Callie's disappearance, which meant the yearbook didn't belong there. She flipped it over. The spine read East Merrow High School. It's a class of 1995. A completely different town, 3 hours away. Why would Callie's name and message appear in a yearbook from a school she didn't even attend? Josie reached out to the school librarian, a woman named Maureen, who explained the yearbook was likely donated years ago, when the school was building its archives. "We get boxes of old materials," she said, "sometimes from estate sales, sometimes from local families. That one's been on the shelf at least a decade." Josie didn't like coincidences, not in cold cases, not when girls disappeared. Her next step: find out who went to East Morrow. 1995. Social media wasn't much help. Many of the profiles were private or abandoned. Some names had changed due to marriage or were too common to trace. Still, she compiled a list of 86 seniors and began contacting them. One by one, the responses were unsettling. 4 bounced back. 3. Politely refused to talk. 2. Were confirmed deceased, one in a hiking accident, another in an unsolved home invasion, and 1. A woman named Chelsea Dawes agreed to a video call. Josie clicked the link as her heart drummed. Chelsea appeared on-screen blonde, early 40s, tired eyes. Behind her, a child played with Legos on the floor. "I don't really know what I can tell you," Chelsea said. "I didn't know any girl named Callie. Not at our school, at least." Josie held up the yearbook page. "Do you recognize the handwriting?" Chelsea leaned in, squinting. "That ... at? That does look familiar. I mean, I remember people writing weird stuff in each other's books, like fake prophecies or poems or edgy jokes. We were stupid back then, but this wasn't. Just a joke," Josie pressed. "This girl disappeared. And this message wasn't written in just anyone's book. It was written in a yearbook that somehow ended up in a different school's library." Chelsea frowned. "Wait, where'd you say you found that?" Josie paused. "Rosewood High." Chelsea went silent. "That's not close. It's like 3 hours away." "Exactly," Josie said softly. "That's why I think someone left this message on purpose. It's for someone specific." Josie spent the next 2 nights digging deeper. She scanned archived local newspapers from East Marrow for anything out of the ordinary in 1995. Drug busts, expulsions, suspensions, party arrests. 1. Article stood out. Senior student expelled. After assault allegation, no charges filed. Date, April 1995. Name, Nathaniel Cross. 17. The article was vague, legally restrained. It mentioned behavioral issues, counseling history, a pattern of inappropriate relationships with underclassmen. The part that made Josie's blood run cold was the final line. Cross was described as having several distinctive tattoos, including 2 small stars on each wrist. She whispered aloud, "There he is. Nathaniel Cross, the man with the stars on his wrist." But the trail went cold after that. No graduation record, no college enrollment, no social media. It was as if he'd vanished after senior year. Josie scanned obituaries. No death notice. Record of a funeral. So where had he gone? That night she recorded again. Nathaniel Cross, suspended and expelled in 1995, possibly connected to Callie Everwood. Tattoo match confirmed. Pattern of predatory behavior suggested. Yearbook placement indicates intentional message, likely meant for someone at East Marrow, possibly Chelsea or another friend. Was the yearbook passed on as a warning or a confession? Hand hovered over the pause button. And if Callie was writing to someone, ... who was she warning them about? She looked at the message again. "If I disappear, find the man with the stars on his wrist." Josie could feel it. That the yearbook wasn't a random discovery. That Callie had left it behind for someone. Maybe more than one person. Maybe others. Had seen something and just never connected the dots. She picked up her phone and scrolled to her blog. New post draft. The girl in the yearbook, Callie Everwood, and the man with stars on his wrist as she wrote. A message popped into her inbox. Subject: I knew her. I think I saw something. GhostInc1995@protonmail.com. The email was brief. No name, no contact. I don't know who you are, but you're not wrong. Callie didn't just vanish, and he didn't stop. With her. She stood frozen, reading the last line again. He didn't stop. The words hit like a match to dry wood. This wasn't a case of a girl who disappeared. This was a pattern, and someone out there had survived him. The first time Josie saw him, it was in a grainy photo from the East Marrow. Dea. Sentinel. April 1995. Black and white. A group of students in detention. One of them sat, slouched against the wall, arms crossed. His sleeves were rolled up. Even in the blurred image, you could make out the dark star-shaped tattoos on each wrist. Nathaniel Cross 17, the caption read. Disciplined multiple times for behavioral infractions. Josie zoomed in. His face was sharp, narrow, too old looking for high school. His eyes held the cold defiance of someone who never apologized. She sat back in her chair and whispered to herself, "There you are." The trail began to unwind. Nathaniel had been expelled in April 1995 after a teacher walked in on him, alone in a music room with a sophomore girl. She was crying. He claimed it was a misunderstanding. The girl later recanted. Charges were never filed. The girl moved away months later. He vanished from public records shortly after. No graduation, no job history, no tax returns. But Josie didn't give up. She requested school archives, disciplinary files, and old medical records from East Merrow County under a journalistic exemption. Most gave her redacted pages and frustrated silence. But one aging school nurse, retired and forgetful, still had access to her own logs. Email from Nurse Brenda Halston, received 9:03 p.m. He came in a few times for cuts on his arms. Said they were from guitar strings, but I remember. He had tattoos, 2 stars, tiny dark ones, on his wrists. Said he got them from a cousin in the city. Told him it was illegal. He just smiled. Josie read the email twice, then leaned back from her screen. It was him, the boy Callie had warned about. The man with stars on his wrist, Josie opened her notes app and began to build his timeline. 1,995, expelled. Disappeared after the Callie Everwood. Case broke. 1996 to 2002. No trace. 2003. A single hospital record appears under the name Andrew Lorne. Broken collarbone from a fall at a hiking trail. The emergency contact is blank. There was no photo attached to the file. But the birthday matched Nathaniel Cross, Andrew Lorne. A name no one had questioned for nearly 2 decades. She cross-referenced public records, licensing databases, and business registries. The name Dr. Andrew Lorne appeared in connection with a private therapy clinic in Missoula, Montana. He was a licensed psychiatrist with glowing reviews, a calm, trusted voice in the community. Josie stared at the screen. He had reinvented himself completely. From troubled teenager to mental health savior. She called the clinic the next morning. "Hi." "Yes," she said, adopting a nervous tone. "I've been having these ... episodes. Memory gaps. My last therapist thinks it might be trauma-related." Someone suggested Dr. Lorne. The receptionist was warm, almost too warm. "Dr. Lorne has a long wait list, but let me see. We had a cancellation next week, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Josie hesitated just enough to sound genuine. "Yes, that's perfect." She hung up and immediately began planning her trip. The following week, Josie stood in front of the building, a renovated Victorian home-turned clinic. Wind rustled the autumn leaves across the gravel driveway. She walked in. The waiting room was minimal, calming soft blue walls, classical music, flickering candles. She signed in under her alias, Claire Everett. When the door opened, her breath caught. There he was, older now, early 40s. Clean-cut, graying temples, but the eyes were the same. Sharp, calculated, cold. "Claire?" we asked with a gentle smile. She nodded. He extended his hand. "I'm Dr. Lorne. Come in." The session lasted 50 minutes. She kept her answers vague, rehearsed. Childhood memories missing, a vague anxiety around lakes, an unexplained fear of confined spaces. He watched her carefully, not creepily, but too attentively, like he was studying her layers. And the strangest part, he never wrote anything down, not once. He leaned forward at one point, sleeves riding up just enough. Nothing, no tattoos. But Josie knew better. Tattoos can be removed or covered. She scanned his arms anyway and noticed a faint scar across his left wrist. The shape was subtle, like something that had once been a star, scraped off with time. After the session, he walked her to the door. "I think we can help you, Claire." Trauma berries. Itself, but it never forgets. She smiled. "I believe that too." She stepped outside, her stomach twisting. This man had buried more than trauma back in her motel. She recorded, "First contact made. Nathaniel Cross is alive, now operating as Dr. Andrew Lorne, formerly expelled for predatory behavior. Now in a position of psychological authority, he didn't just disappear, he evolved. The scars on his wrist suggest attempted tattoo removal. His clinic may hide more than patience. Josie paused and clicked save. She looked out the window. The Montana woods felt still later that night. Unable to sleep, she dug deeper into Andrew's life. He had no social media, no siblings. Wife died 5 years earlier in a car accident. One daughter, Ivy Lorne, currently 17, the same age Callie was. Josie's blood ran cold the next morning. She'd begin surveillance, not just on Andrew, but on Ivy. She closed her laptop, heart racing. It wasn't just about Callie. Anymore, this man hadn't vanished. He'd become respectable, trusted, safe. Which made him even more dangerous. The house looked like it had been waiting to collapse, set back from the main road in Rosewood. Oregon, the Everwood home stood with bowed shutters and chipped paint, wrapped in vines that hadn't been trimmed in years. The mailbox sagged open, its rusted door creaking in the wind. Josie stood at the front steps with her coat collar raised and her hands tight in her pockets. A crow cawed from somewhere behind her as she knocked once, then again. When the door opened, a small pale woman stood there, hollowed by time. Her hair, once chestnut brown, like Callie's, had turned wispy gray. She looked at Josie for a long time before speaking. "You're the one who sent the letter?" Her voice was low and tremulous. Josie nodded. "Josie Moran. I run a blog. I've been following Callie's case. Something's come up that I think you need to see." Elaine Everwood said nothing, only stepped aside. Josie followed her into the dim foyer. The inside was exactly what Josie expected, and worse than she feared. Blankets covered old furniture. The TV looked untouched in years. Dust danced in the filtered light. On the mantel, an old-school portrait of Callie smiled out through a cracked frame. Josie couldn't help but stare. It was the same smile from the yearbook. It's just younger. "I don't usually let people in," Elaine said, sitting carefully on the edge of a floral armchair. "But I read your letter. It's a part about the yearbook message." That was her handwriting, wasn't it? Josie sat across from her and nodded. It matches other samples. The message matches the timeline, someone she was afraid of. Elaine's hands trembled as she reached for a cup of cold tea. She kept secrets, even from me. I thought it was just teenage rebellion, mood swings. But now, I think she knew something terrible was coming. There was a long silence before Josie spoke again. "Did she ever write letters? Keep journals?" Elaine stared at her for a moment, then looked toward the ceiling. She kept a box. "I never opened it. It's in the attic. It's been there since before." Josie's heart raced. Would it be okay if I looked? The attic was narrow and filled with shadows. Josie climbed the creaking steps slowly, her flashlight sweeping. Across old trunks, Christmas decorations, and yellowed newspapers. The air was thick with age. In the far corner, beneath a rotting quilt, was a cedar box, carved with flowers and initials. "C." She knelt beside it and opened the lid. Inside were dozens of folded papers, neatly tied with a faded red ribbon. The top one was addressed to the only one who sees me. Josie swallowed and opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably Callie's. March 2nd, 1995. "Sometimes I think he's a dream, the way he speaks like poetry. Like every word is rehearsed just for me. He told me I make the world feel beautiful again. I know what people would say if they knew. He's too old, he's strange, he's dangerous. But they don't see what I see. They don't see how he touches my hand like it's a secret." Josie unfolded another, then another. The letters shifted over time from innocent fascination to something darker. April 11th, 1995, he says, "I belong to him, that no one else understands what we have. I tried to skip one of our meetings and he showed up at my school parking lot. He was angry, but then he cried. Said I can't scare him like that. I felt guilty, but also trapped." Josie's fingers trembled. The next was dated just days before Callie disappeared. October 19th, 1995, "If they find out about us, they'll take me away. He says I'm old enough to choose who I love, even if the law says I'm not. He wants to leave together. Says we can. Go to Canada, or Arizona, or somewhere quiet. He says people like us don't survive in this world unless we escape it. He gave me a note. Told me to burn it after I read it, but I didn't. It's still hidden in my sketchbook. He told me to meet him at the quarry, midnight. Alone. Josie's pulse roared in her ears. The quarry, not the lake, as the news had reported. Not the dock where people thought she'd last been seen. Everything they thought they knew about Callie's disappearance might be wrong. She carefully gathered the letters and carried them downstairs. Elaine was sitting exactly where she had been, unmoving. Josie laid the bundle gently on the coffee table. She was scared, Josie said. But she still loved him. He manipulated her, convinced her they were soulmates. He isolated her, made her lie. He planned something. The last note he wanted to meet her at the quarry, not the lake. Elaine looked down at the ribbon tied. Stacked like it might catch fire. I asked her so many times who she was seeing. She always smiled, but her eyes looked like she was somewhere else. She was, Josie whispered. And now I think I know where. That night, Josie sat in her motel room and photographed every letter. She pulled up a map and searched for quarries within driving distance of Rosewood. Only one came up, Fox Hollow Quarry. Abandoned since the late 80s. No records of it being searched during the original investigation. She cross-referenced old crime scene reports. Everything had focused on. It had been the place Callie was last seen, according to partygoers. But the letters changed that no one had looked in the right. The place she hit record on her phone. The attic letters reveal a different picture. Callie's disappearance was not random. She was lured, controlled. The man, likely Nathaniel Cross, requested a secret meeting at a different location than previously known. The authorities searched the wrong place. They never went to the quarry. Josie stared at the glowing screen. It was no longer just a cold case. It was a cover-up. It's born from a misdirection, and someone had ensured it stayed that way until now. She zipped the letters into her backpack and stood by the window, out in the distance. The woods of Oregon stretched into black dot tomorrow. She would visit the quarry, and whatever had been buried for 25 years might finally speak. Josie had barely slept. The letters were still spread across the motel bed. Each one a whispered clue, each one pulsing with urgency. But it was the final note, the quarry, that had pulled a thread loose. Now everything was unraveling. She stared at her laptop screen, scrolling through old case databases. She hadn't expected to find anything. Callie's story felt singular, haunting. But then she saw the names Alicia Voss. Disappeared May 1994. Age 17. Last seen outside of Pine Bridge High School. 90 miles northeast of Rosewood. Marlena Teague disappeared. February 1996. Age 16. Last seen waiting for a ride after art class in the town of Belmar. 60 miles southwest. 3 girls, 3 towns, 3 high schools, all within a 100-mile radius, all between the ages of 16 and 17. All gone. Josie dug deeper, pulling up archived local papers and police bulletins. There were disturbing overlaps. Each girl had been described by friends as artistic, introspective, quiet. Each had reportedly been seeing someone in the weeks before they vanished. Each had left behind almost no trace, no struggle, no note, no goodbyes. But one detail connected them more tightly than anything else. A friend of Marlena's had described the mystery boyfriend during her police interview. He had tattoos on his wrists. I think they were stars, something like that. She told me once he said they were guides for lost souls. Creepy, right? And Alicia? A faded note in her file mentioned a boyfriend from another town, name unknown, with a small black tattoo, like a star or compass. Josie's breath caught in her throat. 3 girls, 1 symbol. The further she searched, the deeper the pattern grew. Photos from each of the scenes taken years apart in different towns showed a recurring mark. It had been dismissed at the time as meaningless graffiti, but Josie recognized it instantly. A star, encircled, sometimes etched into the side of a lamppost, sometimes carved into a bench once, even painted onto a drainage tunnel behind Pine Bridge High. It wasn't random. It was ritual. She printed the photos and laid them side by side. The symbols matched almost perfectly, same number of points, same angular style, same circular framing. Someone had left his mark at every location. He wasn't just taking them, he was branding the silence. Josie hit record on her phone, new. Connection established. 3 girls, 3 different towns, spanning 1994 to 1996, all matched in age, profile, and circumstances. Each connected to a male subject with star tattoos on his wrists. Symbol found near each. Site matches across all 3 cases. A star within a circle, possibly a calling card, possibly a warning. She paused, staring at the symbol in the Belmar photo. A circle of ash and branches surrounded it, almost like a ritual site. Theory: the girls didn't act, disappear randomly. They were selected, targeted, groomed. This is the work of a serial predator operating over multiple towns under different identities. Josie clicked stop. She stared at the words on her screen. Serial predator. Her hands trembled as she typed. Connection to Nathaniel Cross? The FBI files were harder to access. She used a contact an ex-journalist from Seattle, who owed her a favor and received a heavily redacted report marked 1997. Multi-state abductions, UNSUBC 13. The details were scarce, but the theme was clear. The Bureau had seen the pattern too, but nothing stuck. No bodies, no witnesses, no physical evidence, just 3 disappearances and a cloud of teenage silence. The report mentioned a potential male suspect tied to a school in East Merrow, Oregon, the same school Nathaniel had been expelled from, but the suspect had vanished. Before investigators could pursue further leads, Josie whispered aloud because he changed his name. Andrew Lorne. She felt sick. Josie leaned back and picked up her phone. The email from Ghost Inc. 1995 was still there. He didn't stop with her. What if they were one of the survivors? She hit reply. I believe you, please. I need to know what you saw. She hit send and stared at the screen. By evening, she was driving again. The trees blurred past in dark waves, the Oregon sky turning purple with dusk. She wasn't sure where she was going exactly. She knew she couldn't sit still. The cases were starting to suffocate her. Every mile felt like a step closer to a truth no one had dared to touch in. Decades at a rest stop near Belmar, she pulled off and parked near a broken picnic table. The woods behind it were thick and wild. She sat, flipping through the 3 case files again. Alicia, Marlene, Callie, their eyes stared up at her. From old school photos, all of them trusted someone who promised they were different. Someone who said, "You see the world like I do?" She pulled out her phone and opened a voice memo. The FBI closed the pattern, called it a dead lead. No forensic evidence. No suspect name, but they were looking in the wrong place. The suspect didn't hide. He evolved. He became someone people trusted. A psychiatrist. A father. She looked up toward the woods, and I'm afraid he might be starting again. As the wind picked up, she turned her headlights on. A small flicker reflected from the trees. She stepped closer. It was faint, weather-worn, but still there, etched into the bark of a tree nearly invisible. A 5-pointed star. Enclosed in a circle, Josie froze. It was real. He had been here. She reached out, tracing the symbol with her fingertips. The bark was cold, damp, but underneath it, meaning, intent. She wasn't just chasing a ghost anymore. She was on his trail. The clinic was nestled between pine trees and mountains, like a retreat designed to hide secrets. Josie stared through the windshield, watching the sign sway gently in the breeze. Foxbend Wellness and Recovery Center, healing starts in silence. She shut off the ignition from the outside. It looked peaceful, soothing, blue siding, wraparound porch, wind chimes humming like whispers. But Josie knew better. She knew the man behind it, Nathaniel Cross. Now going by Dr. Andrew Lorne, she had studied him in court reports, school records, yearbooks, and redacted FBI files. She had seen his evolution from troubled teen to polished therapist, from predator to professional, from ghost to gatekeeper of other people's pain. Now, she would meet him face to face. Again, the lobby was warm, draped in faux tranquility. Soft instrumental music, water trickling from a rock fountain, the scent of eucalyptus. The receptionist looked up with a calm smile. "You must be Claire," she said. "Dr. Lorne is ready for you." Josie nodded, adjusting the glasses she wore for disguise. "Yes, thanks." She followed the receptionist down a hallway, counting. The doors, office, meditation room, lounge, then dash his. The door opened, and there he was, older, wiser looking, his dark hair flecked with gray. He wore a deep blue sweater over a crisp white shirt. He looked like the kind of man you trusted with your worst secrets. "Claire," he greeted, extending a hand. "Please, come in." His voice was smooth, measured, practiced. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, but not forceful. Everything about him was carefully calibrated, controlled. Josie sat down on the small leather couch as he took a seat across from her in a tall, straight-backed chair. "So," he said, folding his hands, "tell me what brings you here." Told him a story laced with half-truths and buried hooks. "I've been having memory problems," she began. "Not clinical, more like flashes. Dreams that feel like real events. Moments where I wake up not knowing how I got where I am." He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving her. "Have you experienced any trauma in the past?" "But I can reach it. There's something there, something old. I think it's tied to someone I used to know." He tilted his head. "A man." Josie nodded. "Yes, he made me feel ... seen, important, until one day I felt like I was vanishing." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "Whatever this is, we'll get to the root of it together." Josie forced a grateful smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." For the next 40 minutes, he led her through questions-guided visualization. Tone shifts, grounding exercises, but she noticed the patterns. How his gaze would hold too long when she said, vulnerable. How he always circled back to control. Dependency, fear-cloaked in therapy jargon. He didn't ask about her support system. He didn't ask about medication or previous diagnoses. He asked who she told things to, who she trusted. By the end of the session, she felt like he'd performed a surgery with no scalpel. He was dissecting her piece by piece without leaving a mark. When the session ended, he stood and walked her to the door. "I have an opening." "Again next Thursday," he said. "Same time?" "Yes," he smiled. "Right. It helps when patients keep consistency. Trust grows in repetition." She thanked him and stepped into the hallway just as the door clicked behind her. She glanced down at the file folder tucked against his chest. Her fake name, Claire Everett. Underneath it, scrawled in his handwriting, was one word: fragmented. Back. In her motel that night, Josie recorded, "Contact successful. Session lasted 53 minutes. Dr. Lorne remains precise, psychologically manipulative. No signs of remorse. Fully embedded in a position of trust and authority. Language and tone reveal patterns of emotional conditioning. Still no mention of past identity. Still dangerous." She paused the recording, sat in silence. He hadn't changed. He'd just gotten better at hiding. She scanned the clinic's website, hunting for staff names, internal events, patient testimonies. Then something new. A staff photo posted just days ago, Andrew Center, smiling, his arm loosely around a young girl with chestnut hair. 17 maybe? Big eyes, shy smile. Ivy Lorne, his daughter. Josie stared at the screen. Something about the girl unsettled her. Not fear exactly, more like distance. Ivy's smile didn't reach her eyes. Josie zoomed in on her wrists. Bare, no bracelets. No scars. But her arms were folded tightly. Protectively, she clicked back to the therapist's bios. Ivy wasn't listed. But under administrative assistant intern, there was a single line, Ivy Lorne, psychology student, assistant intern. He was mentoring her, teaching her how to listen, how to read people, how to pull them apart. The thought made Josie sick. She stood, grabbed her coat, and stepped outside into the cold Montana night. The wind stung her cheeks, the scent of pine biting at her throat. She pulled out her phone. Email to ghostinc1995@protonmail.com. Subject, urgent, I've met him. He's still active, not violently, but psychologically. He's buried himself inside the system. He has a daughter, 17. If you know anything about his time after 1996, please. Now is the time to tell me. She hesitated, then added, I think she's in danger, and I don't think she knows it. She hit send and exhaled. A single light flickered in the woods behind the motel. Josie turned and looked toward it. It was probably just a porch light. But tonight, everything felt like a signal. She walked back to her room slowly, steps echoing in the gravel. He had survived, hidden, rebranded. But the man he became was still the boy he'd always been. Only now, he had a new victim, and she called him Dad. Josie followed him at a distance. Andrew's silver SUV wound through the mountain road, curving past frostbitten pines and rocky terrain. It was nearing dusk. The sky was thick with clouds, bruised purple and blue. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles pale. He wasn't heading home. Not to the clinic, not to town. This was somewhere else. Somewhere private. 20 minutes later, the SUV turned off onto a gravel path lined with rotting wooden signs. Fox Bend. Wilderness authorized entry only. Josie waited until he disappeared down the tree line, then followed. The cabin emerged like a scar in the forest. Remote? No cell service. No neighbors. The structure was modest log siding, wraparound porch, chimney smoking faintly. A light flickered in one window. She parked out of sight, tucked behind trees, and approached on foot. It wasn't the first time Josie had trespassed. But this felt different. Quiet here was unnatural, too clean, too still. She slipped around to the back of the cabin. No signs of alarm systems, no cameras, just an old shed. Firewood stacked in perfect symmetry, and a metal storm door at the base of the structure. She tugged on the handle. Locked, of course, but the main door upstairs. Maybe not. The front door creaked open, unlocked. Inside was all exposed wood and carefully arranged furniture like something from a retreat brochure. A fireplace still crackled in the main room. 2 mugs sat on the mantel, steam curling from their rims. She listened. Nothing. She moved quickly. Down the hall, through a door behind the kitchen stairs, not to a basement, to something else. The air grew colder with each step down. The walls narrowed, lit only by a single hanging bulb. At the bottom, a heavy wooden door. Josie pushed it open. What? She saw made her breath catch. A room part storage, part shrine. Drawings lined the walls. Not just random art. Callie's style. Soft graphite shading, swirling lines. The same signature in the lower right corner. CE. Some were portraits of girls, young, wide-eyed, all haunted. Others were sceneswoods, lakes, cabins, long dirt roads, and then one drawing that made Josie's knees nearly buckle. It was Callie. Standing alone under a tree, her arms outstretched, eyes blacked out below her, written in small cursive, "You said you'd never leave me." Josie stared, frozen. This wasn't memorabilia. This was obsession. He had kept them. For decades, she began snapping photos frantically. Her hands shook as she captured the room, every sketch, every piece of evidence. Then a sound above her, a footstep, then another. She turned off the flashlight. Too late. The door creaked open behind her. "Did you lose your way?" His voice low, sharp, almost amused. Josie slowly turned. Andrew stood at the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. "I was hiking," she said quickly. "Saw the cabin. Thought it was abandoned." He took a step closer. His eyes didn't blink. "That's a lot of explanation for someone standing in my locked basement." I'm sorry," she stammered. "I was curious." His gaze flicked toward the sketches, then back to her. "Curiosity," he said, "is a dangerous thing." In 2 strides, he closed the distance and slammed the door shut behind him. Josie backed toward the far wall. He didn't recognize her, not yet, but he could see through her lies now. "You're not Claire," said softly. She didn't answer. "You're not here to heal. You're here to dig." He stepped closer. Josie's voice was trembling, but steady. "Why do you still have her drawings?" He paused. A flicker crossed his face, something real. Raw. She wasn't supposed to leave. "You hurt her," Josie said. "You controlled her." His expression twisted. "I saved her." Josie's breath caught. "I gave her something no one else did, attention, meaning, and she gave me devotion? We were the same. You were 17. She was 16. She understood me," he shouted. The crack in his voice was sharp and sudden, and then he breathed deeply, smoothed his shirt, rebuilt the mask. "You're going to leave now?" he said coldly. Josie stared at him. "No," she said. He lunged. They crashed against the table. Papers flew. She shoved him back, heart racing, grabbed her arm hard. His face inches from hers. Then his grip loosened. For a split second, he hesitated. "Your eyes," he said. "I've seen them before." Josie twisted free and ran. Up the stairs. Through the hall. Out the door. Behind her, she heard the slam of the basement door. She didn't look back. She sprinted to the trees, adrenaline ripping through her veins. The woods felt endless. Cold air burned her lungs. Branches scraped her face. She finally reached the car, dove in, slammed the lockdown, hands shaking. She started the engine. The cabin stayed silent behind her. No one followed. Back at the motel, she collapsed onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. Email from ghostinc1995@protonmail.com. Subject: I know that place, the cabin. I've been there. I thought it was just a dream, but the sketches, the smell of paint, the locked room. He kept us quiet. We weren't the only ones. Check the floorboards. Josie stared at the message. The basement wasn't just a shrine, it was a tomb. The cassette lay in the bottom of a dusty filing drawer, beneath a stack of old invoices and hand-labeled folders. Josie had returned to the cabin the next morning just before dawn while Andrew was at the clinic, assuming no one would dare come back. But she had. Wearing gloves, headlamp, recording everything, and now she stood frozen in front of the cassette player she'd found in a milk crate under the basement stairs. The tape already loaded. It was labeled only CE Session 3, March 1996. 3 months before Callie Everwood disappeared. Josie clicked play. The tape hissed to life. At first, silence. Then a soft click. A voice. Quiet. Hesitant, Callie. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Just start with how you're feeling, a male voice responded. Calm. Almost clinical. Josie closed her eyes. Her hands trembled. This was no interview, no formal evaluation. The tone was wrong, too familiar, too intimate. I feel wrong, like I did something bad, but I didn't mean to. Said I embarrassed him, but I didn't, I swear. There was a pause, shuffling papers, a breath. Then the man again. You know how I feel about you, Callie. You know you're different. But I told my mom I might stop seeing you. I thought, and what happened when you told her that? She yelled. Said I was acting strange, that I was too secretive. Did you tell her why you're seeing me? No, you said not to. Exactly. That's how we keep this safe. Josie pressed her hand to her mouth. This wasn't therapy. This was conditioning. She fast-forwarded slightly. The next segment was quieter, more strained. He said if I didn't love him back, no one else ever would. The voice cracked. I think I believed him. I think I still do. And a sob muffled. I miss who I was before, but I don't. Remember how to be her? Silence. Then something sharp. Door slam. Movement. And then the voice. Deeper. Louder. No one's taking you from me, Callie. No one. You promised. The tape hissed, then stopped. Josie didn't move. The player clicked off with a finality that echoed through the basement like a door slamming shut on a grave. She pulled the tape out and slipped it into her bag, wrapping it tightly in fabric. Her throat burned. Her eyes stung. This wasn't just emotional evidence. It was legal evidence. If it held up, it had Callie's voice. His voice, the coercion. The threat, 25 years too late, but still real, back in the motel. She copied the tape using her portable converter, uploaded the audio to 3 cloud drives. One sent to her anonymous tip email, one to her editor, one to the encrypted backup. Then she hit record on her own voice memo. March 2nd, 2020. 7:40. A.M. Recovered a cassette labeled CE Session 3. March 1996. From the basement filing drawer in Andrew, Lauren's off-site cabin. The recording contains what appears to be a manipulated therapy session with minor Callie Everwood. Contains verbal coercion, grooming language, and concluding threat. Male voice believed to be Nathaniel Cross, a.k.a. Dr. Andrew Lorne. This is without exaggeration the clearest piece of evidence linking him to Callie's disappearance. Josie paused. Her voice cracked slightly. I heard her. Her fear, she thought. It was her fault. She stopped recording, then turned off her phone. Sat in silence. Hours later, she called her contact at the State Bureau anonymously. Left only a voicemail. You have a predator running a licensed clinic in Montana. Name: Dr. Andrew Lorne. Real name: Nathaniel Cross. Attached is a file with proof. Tape from 1996. One of his victims was Callie Everwood. She never came home. You'll find everything you need at the following link. She hung up. It wasn't justice. Not yet, but it was something. That night, Josie sat in her car outside the Fox Bend Clinic. From her spot across the street, she could see the second-story window. The light was still on. Andrew sat at his desk, alone, reviewing notes, smiling occasionally. To himself, the same man from the tape, untouched, successful, trusted, but now Dash watched. She looked down at her phone. A new email from Ghost Inc. 1995 at protonmail.com. Subject. That was me, the girl on the tape. I remember now. I was there that day. I thought she left me behind. But she never left on her own. She never made it to the quarry. She made it to the cabin, and she never left the basement. Josie's chest seized. She reread the line again. She never left the basement. She sat, upright, adrenaline returning in a violent wave. The floorboards, the message, the voice. The evidence wasn't just on tape. It was still there, buried. She started the car tomorrow. She was going back. Not for clues, not for questions. For Callie. The morning air was sharp and cold, biting into Josie's lungs as she stood beside the freshly cordoned-off quarry. The early light fractured through the towering pines, casting long shadows over the cracked earth and tangled brush. News vans and flashing lights crowded the edges of the site. Reporters whispering into microphones, their eyes flickering with the promise of a story finally coming alive. After 25 years of silence, the case was no longer cold. Elaine Everwood stood quietly behind the police tape, wrapped in a heavy coat, hands clutching a faded scarf. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed from nights of restless sleep and grief. Beside her, Detective Mark Callahan knelt near the dig site, brushing away dirt with slow, deliberate strokes. It had been Josie's discovery, the tape that reopened. The investigation, recorded therapy session, was irrefutable. The chilling voice of Callie pleading, broken by sobs and threats, shattered decades of denial and misdirection. Now they were here, digging where Callie had written in her final letter, "Meet me at the quarry. Midnight. Alone." The earth was stubborn beneath the shovels, roots tangled with rusted scraps of metal and shattered glass. Suddenly, the blade of a trowel struck something hard. A metallic glint caught the sunlight. Mark leaned forward, fingers trembling as he unearthed a small, delicate silver locket. The clasp was tarnished, but the intricate engraving was unmistakable. Inside, a faded photograph of a girl, smiling, eyes bright. Callie, careful hands brushed away more soil, revealing a patch of fabric. Denim thin. Worn but unmistakably from the 1990s. The jacket had decayed, but its seams held strong. It was wrapped tightly around something fragile. A sigh passed through the crowd one by one. The remains came into view. Fragments of bone, small, twisted hand. The coroner arrived shortly after, solemn and quiet. DNA tests were rushed, racing against the relentless pace of the news cycle. Within hours, the impossible was confirmed. Callie Everwood. She had been here all along. Elaine collapsed against the fence, tears streaming down her face. For years, she had prayed for closure, for a sign that her daughter was at peace. Now, she had more than hope. She had proof. She whispered into the wind, trembling, "Callie, I'm here. I'm coming for you." Josie stood at a distance, watching the scene unfold, her fingers curled tightly around her notebook. Filled with scribbled notes, sketches, and dates, this was the moment she had chased across states. Decades and lies. She had brought a lost girl home, but the story was far from over. Behind her, the forest whispered secrets, of darkness still lurking, of silence still waiting. The news was sudden. Andrew Lorne was arrested. The headline screamed his real name, Nathaniel Cross. Like a curse finally spoken aloud in a quiet suburb of Montana. Life inside his home shifted into a chilling silence. Ivy Lorne sat in her dimly lit room, the walls lined with sketches pinned by thumbtacks, abstract faces, swirling patterns, and haunting silhouettes. Her fingers traced one in particular, a girl standing alone by a dark lake, her eyes blackened out. The style was eerily familiar, like something out of a forgotten dream. She shivered, pulling her cardigan tighter around her thin frame. For weeks, strange nightmares had plagued her sleep, dreams of locked doors she couldn't open, of whispers behind the walls, scars on her, arms faint, yet unmistakable surface marks she couldn't remember getting. She stared at them, tracing their faded lines. How did these get here? Josie stood hesitantly outside Ivy's front door, clutching a folder of notes. When Ivy finally opened it, her eyes were wary but curious. Josie smiled gently. "I'm not here to hurt you. I want to understand." Inside, the air was heavy, layered. With tension, Ivy led Josie to her room. The drawings were scattered across the floor. Josie picked up one carefully. "Do these mean something to you?" she asked softly. Ivy swallowed. "I don't know. Sometimes I think they're memories, things I shouldn't remember." Josie nodded slowly. "Sometimes our minds protect us by hiding the worst." Their conversation paused as Ivy pointed to a sketch in the corner, a circle enclosing a star, the same symbol Josie had seen everywhere. "It's been in my dreams," Ivy whispered. Like a warning, Josie's heart clenched. History was repeating. Ivy's voice trembled as she confessed. "Sometimes I hear footsteps at night, locked doors in the basement. I've never been allowed down there." Josie's mind raced. The basement, the hidden room, the secrets that never left. She placed a reassuring hand on Ivy's shoulder. "I think you're brave for telling me." Ivy's eyes brimmed with tears. "What if I'm next? What if I'm already trapped?" Her own fear? "No, you're not alone." As Josie left the house, she glanced back once. Ivy stood in the window, its eyes wide and searching. Josie knew the fight wasn't over. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed relentlessly as the judge read the charges. 3 counts of murder, 1 attempted murder, and a long list of related offenses. Andrew Lord Nathaniel Cross sat quietly, his once impenetrable mask now cracked, fragile beneath the weight of decades of lies. The evidence was overwhelming. Tapes, the letters, the bones in the quarry, and now Ivy's testimony. Josie's blog exploded overnight. Her detailed, painstakingly researched posts drew thousands of readers who followed the story with a mix of horror and relief. She exposed how a man, cloaked in charm and professional credentials, had preyed on young girls and manipulated those around him. She didn't glamorize the predator. She gave voice to the victims Collie, the other missing girls, and now Ivy, Elaine. Everwood made the journey back to the old school in Oregon. The halls were quieter than she remembered, the walls now painted in muted colors. But one thing remained, the dusty, forgotten yearbook stacked in a corner of the library. She found the worn volume Josie had first uncovered, the one with Callie's desperate message scribbled on the back page. "If I disappear, find the man with the stars on his wrist." With trembling hands, Elaine laid fresh white lilies beside the page. A silent memorial, tribute, a promise never to forget. Meanwhile, miles away in Montana, Ivy stood before her bedroom mirror. The afternoon sun spilled through the window, illuminating her pale face. Her wrists were bare, no tattoos, no scars visible now, just smooth skin that held the quiet weight of her story. She traced a finger along the faint lines she still couldn't explain. Wondering how much of her past was real and how much was shaped by the man who called himself her father. Did she ever truly know? Him, Josie's voice echoed in her mind. "You're not alone." For the first time in years, Ivy felt a flicker of something she hadn't known: hope. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves in the backyard where it all began. The quiet horror had not vanished. It whispered in the rustling grass, in the shadows of the trees, in the spaces between the silence, but truth had a way of echoing forever.